Greetings, YouTubers. Welcome to our second in a series on mouthpieces. The first, as you remember, is one where we discussed the different criteria that we use when we're judging and testing mouthpieces. We laid those out. If you haven't seen those, please do, because it's very important. It's going to be helpful to understand all the rest of the videos that are going to follow. In this coming up video, we're going to be talking first about mouthpiece nomenclature. We need to define our terms so that when I use a term, we at least all have in mind the same thing, and there's not any confusion about terminology. And then we're going to have a short discussion on mouthpiece facings and what those influence in terms of that criteria that we laid out in the first video. And I'll see you after that. The mouthpiece has a facing, and that facing has several parts. It's made up of a reed table or flat table, two side rails that provide the resistance curve, and the side rails terminate in a tip rail. The interior of the mouthpiece has a bore and a chamber. Sometimes it's referred to as the tone chamber. The tone chamber has two parts, the side walls and the baffle, or the baffle contours. Outside of the mouthpiece, we have the tenon, the barrel or body of the mouthpiece, the beak slope, the beak contour, and the mouthpiece tip, or tip thickness, which is distinguished from the mouthpiece tip rail. The first aspect of the mouthpiece facing we're going to talk about is the flat table. This table should be flat and should be true. It is possible to build a concavity in the facing table as long as the points the reed rests on are even, and as long as the reed is able to seal on the facing so that you don't get any leakage from the bottom of the window of the mouthpiece. Convex flat tables wreak havoc. They're disastrous acoustically because the reed cannot possibly seal efficiently on the mouthpiece. And this will cause all kinds of reed problems, response problems, whistles and squeaks, stuffiness, and some very, very weird effects beside that. The next element in the facing we need to consider are the two side rails. These side rails provide the resistance curve. The resistance curve of the mouthpiece can be long, it can be short, or medium, obviously. Think of the resistance curve like the fulcrum on a diving board. Obviously, the closer the fulcrum is to the end of a diving board, the stiffer the diving board feels. The further away the fulcrum is from the diving board, the more flexible that same diving board will feel. In the same way, shorter facing curves provide greater resistance, and longer facing curves provide less resistance. The side rails and the facing curve of the side rails terminates in the tip rail. The tip rail itself should have at least 1/4 of a millimeter in thickness. If the tip rail is too thin, squeaks can result. If the tip rail is too thick, it can cause sluggish response, especially when you try to slur up into the high register. Besides the resistance the facing curve provides, it also influences response greatly. The more symmetrical and the more identical the curve is on each of the side rails, the more even, predictable, and secure response will be, and the easier it will be to adjust reeds. If the facing curves are not identical in the left and right rails, if they're somehow crooked or askew, or we say asymmetrical in the facing, essentially what you're doing is creating two resistance curves on the mouthpiece, not one. And this really frustrates good reed adjustment, makes it difficult to make reeds play well and sound well, and it causes the embouchure and air to work much more to secure response, clarity of tone, and such things throughout the pitch and dynamic range of the clarinet. For this reason, and many others, asymmetrical facings are not recommended by me. Whatever their virtues, they cause a lot more problems than they might provide. So try to avoid those at all costs. So that's some of the basic information on mouthpiece nomenclature and also on mouthpiece facings. Now, we're going to be talking about other things in the next videos. We're going to go into the interior of the mouthpiece. And before that, though, I'm going to show you in the next video how mouthpieces are measured and how they're finished by someone who does the kind of work that I do in terms of mouthpiece work. So you'll have a little better idea of how to check things out yourself. And I'll try to also give you a few sources where you can get some mouthpiece tools and fabricate some of your own tools very inexpensively, so you can check out mouthpieces and measure them for your own self. All these things are going to help you analyze the mouthpieces that you get, and they're going to help you get a more objective idea of whether this mouthpiece is really the right tool for the right job. In the meantime, thanks a lot for subscribing to our videos. More and more people are subscribing. Let your friends know. We're trying to give very helpful information. And all you have to do is click on the little yellow thing that way. I think it's probably going to be that way on the YouTube site to subscribe to our videos. And also if you have a chance, drop by our website and say hello. Look at some of the products that we have there and some of the services that we have there. Also, it might be of great benefit to you. And in the meantime, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time where we're going to measure some mouthpieces and show how mouthpieces are finished.